What's crackin', philosophers? This is ESPN 10, the Philosophy Channel. I'm your host, Michael Fumafreddo. Alongside me always is Nicholas Fiocco and Nicholas Matera.
Howdy.
And today our very special guest, philosophy major at the University of Montauk, Dante Pascal. Dante, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
So last week, one of our listeners tuned in and told us to read the story Allegory in the Cave by Plato. And today we're going to explain it to you guys. So Nick, what do you think of the book?
I found it really interesting that Plato, who was an ancient Greek philosopher, wrote this allegory thousands of years ago, and it's still relevant in modern society. I thought it definitely impacted in the way I kind of look at things in my modern life.
And Dante, since you being the philosophy major, what were your thoughts?
Well, it just proves, how we recognize things. It's very interesting how we base our truths off what we know. If we're never presented with something in life, we don't accept it, and we don't recognize it to be true because we have no form or basis of it, and it will be completely new to us.
I also agree with Nick and Dante. I thought the story is very interesting. It brought up a lot of good points, and it really brings up the true question of what is reality.
So what you guys are basically saying is that how we recognize is what we believe is the truth, right?
Yes.
So what do you guys think is the truth according to Plato?
I think overall, truth is, well, I know the overall message is that there are people who live in the dark, like the people who are in the cave, and they live in the dark their whole life, which represents not being very intelligent. And when they go out into the world of intelligence, they're blinded by the light, and they can't really get a sense of what's going on. And so they stick to what they know, and they stay in the cave, and they live their lives happy, or however they want to live it. And that's the overall message, because then there's people who go out because they have to be brave enough to go out and experience, intelligence. And Plato says that those are the people that should be the leaders because they know how to lead others through their intelligence. But overall, I think truth is definitely as what we perceive to be true, because the people in the cave, they see the puppets every day, and they see them talk, they hear them, so they assume that is reality. And if you're in a situation where you're not presented with the true answers, or what we at least perceive to be true, then you're bound to stick to what you know, what you recognize.
Nick, I thought that was a great answer, and I have a good example of this actually. This kind of reminds me of parents who treat their children not badly, but they put their children in a bubble. Children who live in a bubble, they don't know what's going on in the world. They don't know how to act in real society. And I agree with Nick that the people who do go out and they're braver and they're not in the bubble and they know what's going on, they know what to do in real life. They know how to handle certain situations, unlike the kids who live in a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the kids who live in the cave, quote unquote, could be either less intelligent or more intelligent, but in reality, the person who goes out and is braver and gets out of the cave are the ones who I think will really succeed in life.
Well, you mentioned being in a cave, that's just an example, but have you ever had a situation where you've seen something that you thought was true or something that you thought was false?
Of course. Let's send it over to the philosophy major. I'm a little curious. What do you have to say?
Yes, I had a case study where I was talking to a young believer in the Flat Earth Society, which is basically people who believe that the Earth is flat. So this kid thinks that the Earth is completely flat like a dish.
So if he kept going, he'd just fall right off the side.
Yes. So I then showed him pictures of the Earth from space, and he refused to believe it. He was like, "This is real. This is not real. These are doctored photos. The government is trying to make me believe that the Earth is round. This is all a big conspiracy." So that's an example of a real life scenario in which people believe what they have, been taught, what by this kid's parents have been, teaching him this, and they're, it's hard to see that the Earth is.
But the thing is, the people that used to be the norm way back when.
Way back when, that was also the norm.
But then when we found out that the Earth is obviously round, that's my opinion. That became the truth.
Yeah.
And only some people believe it. So that's basically saying that's the truth to them, but not to everybody else. So the truth has many different meanings depending on who you talk to.
Can I ask you though, Dante, how is it possible that in the modern times, how is it possible that people can believe in illusion and they can believe it as reality. Like, how could this kid believe? Why do you think it's his? Is it his fault that he believes that the world is flat? Like, what do you want?
Now this goes back to how they were raised, what they were brought up on. This kid's parents they were only telling him that the earth is flat. He also, when you look out your window, right, you don't see a giant curve in the earth like, oh, this thing is a big old round shape. You know, the earth looks flat when you're on it, so it can be perceived, you know, that the earth is flat when you only have that one view. But if this kid becomes an astronaut and goes to space, his mind is going to be completely blown when he sees that the earth is round.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So then again, like, reality is what you know and what you're taught and what life is based on for you.
So, like you said, though, the kid had a pretty negative reaction towards your teaching, like you teaching him that
Yeah.
the earth is round.
He was
What happened,
appalled.
in your professional opinion, what happens to the average person when they live their whole life doing the same thing, and you tell them, actually, you're wrong? How do they react to that?
They typically don't take it well. They can even, you know, drive them into a state of madness if what they've been told to be the norm and the truth is just disproven right in front of them. It'll be hard for them to accept. It boggles the mind for them. So it really, they want to reject it, and they go through the 5 stages, and, you know, they deny it, they get depressed about it, and they typically don't accept it, and they try to argue it even though there's facts to prove it's true.
All right,
Well-
I'm going to have to cut you off right there, but we want to get moving. So, Nick, you wanted to explain that when you first came in with that, we read about this, you wanted to say, like, oh, this is just a metaphor for daily life. What things in daily life can act as a cave to us and change reality?
Well, I actually think today in modern society we're actually held at a disadvantage to others because of all the fake news, fake media coming out with stories that make us believe things that are not true. And also there are things like social media that distract us from our everyday life.
Why do you say social media? What about it is an illusion?
An illusion, well, social media things like, let's say, I don't know.
Well, I guess if like you take a picture
Yeah,
with it
yeah.
and like you put a filter
Well,
on
you
it,
could-
like
you could be
that's
someone-
not you. You're
you could-
altering someone
Yeah,
else's
yeah.
reality.
You
what
could
they
be
think about it.
someone else on Twitter than you are in real life.
You could look like Kate
Yeah.
Upton on Twitter, and
That
then
was the point
Exactly.
I was
Like, so-
thinking of.
yeah.
Exactly, yeah,
How
yeah.
people kind of live a false lifestyle. Like, you have kids that are from middle-aged, not middle-aged, I'm sorry, middle-class families that think that online, at least, that they're straight out of the hood, but that's not really the case, and so they put on this persona, and that's a false
Yeah.
reality right there.
It's to be cool.
Yeah.
And Dante, how do you think this relates to the mind and how life is perceived through these caves and fake realities?
People want to be perceived as one thing, and they want to show themselves and display it in one way, so they put up this fake facade and portrait in a way, and that's how it relates to social media being, in our facets of life. But then when you actually get to meet this person on social media, you may think, wow, this is like nothing like what they're actually like.
Oh, like this kid's a herb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can be like this Nick Fiocco _13 kid. He acts like a baller on his Instagram. Then you meet him in real life, you're like, what? This kid's a loser.
So these fake realities, you could say, shackle the mind, I guess.
Yes, they definitely do shackle
Holds
them
us
on.
down from progressing into the world.
And I would say like all of these are just distractions that change the way we see reality and perceive it in our daily lives.
Mhm.
But we just wanted to wrap it up now. The allegory proposes that there's a distinction between appearance and reality. I think we can all agree with that, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And why do you guys think that?
Well, I personally think that because of the example that Plato gives with the boys in the cave, how they see the puppets and they assume the puppets that talk to be reality because for their whole lives they've been shackled up in a cave and that's what they assume to be true. So to them, what appears to be true because no one else has ever told them anything else besides, oh look, there's a puppet that talks. That must be a real thing. So they assume that to be reality. And like we said before, unless you've been given circumstances that tell you otherwise, you're bound to believe whatever you see and perceive it to be true.
I think Nick brings up a really good point, and like I said before, how the questions that were asked, I said, what is reality? That's a question that can't be answered. It's what your mind
it's a
perceives.
case by case basis.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's going to be it for our show. We'd like to give a big thanks to Dante for being here. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Boys in the Book.
And if you have any questions, feel free to call 718-757-8392.
Four.
All right, well
My dad.
that's Boys in the Cave for you guys today. We are ESPN 10.
Have a good night.
Good night.